I won millions in the lottery. $72 million, to be exact. And I made a decision that would change everything. I told no one. Not my children. Not my siblings. Not a single soul who shared my blood. Instead, I did something that might sound cruel, but I needed to know the truth. I asked my family for help. Just $3,000 to save my home. It was a test. A simple test of love, loyalty, and everything I thought we were to each other. And out of everyone, my son, my daughter, my sister, my brother, only one person reached out their hand to catch me before I fell. But that person? They weren't family at all. I want to pause here because I'm so grateful you found your way to my story. If this resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. And I have to know, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. I need to see how far this story of revenge has traveled, how many people out there understand what it feels like to be tested by the ones you love most. Your city, your country, let me know. Because what happened to me, it could happen to anyone. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Anita Jacobs. I'm 56 years old, and until recently, I thought I knew what family meant. I thought love was something you could count on, something woven into the fabric of blood and shared history. I was wrong. It was a Saturday evening, one of those humid, heavy nights where the air clings to your skin. I'd invited everyone over for dinner at my modest little home on Maple Street. The house wasn't much. Peeling paint on the shutters. A front porch that creaked when you stepped on it. But it was mine. Or, at least, it had been mine for 30 years. Every corner held a memory. Every room had witnessed sacrifice. I made my mother's cornbread, slow-cooked greens, and baked chicken with that crispy skin my son Tyrone used to beg for when he was little. I set the table with the good plates, the ones I saved for special occasions, and lit 2 candles in the center. I wanted everything to feel warm, safe, like home should feel. But I also wanted to see something. I needed to know the truth. They arrived one by one. Tyrone showed up first with his wife, Aaliyah, trailing behind him in her designer heels and oversized sunglasses, even though the sun had already set. She kissed my cheek without looking at me, her eyes already scanning my living room like she was appraising it. My daughter Jessica came next, glued to her phone, barely mumbling a greeting. My sister Amanda arrived late, complaining about traffic, and my brother Terrence? He didn't even bother to show. He called halfway through dinner from some sports bar, shouting over the noise that he'd catch me next time. We sat down to eat. The conversation was light at first. Work, weather, Jessica's new boyfriend. But I could feel my heartbeat quickening. My hands were sweating under the table. I had $72 million sitting in a bank account they knew nothing about, and I was about to lie to them. Not just any lie. A desperate, humiliating lie. I cleared my throat and put down my fork. I need to talk to you all about something, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. Tyrone looked up from his plate, still chewing. Aaliyah raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Jessica sighed like I'd just interrupted her entire life. I'm about to lose the house, I said. The words came out shaky, just like I'd practiced. I'm $3,000 short on what I owe. If I don't come up with it by next Friday, they're going to evict me. Silence. Not the kind of silence that holds concern. The kind that holds judgment. Tyrone leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. Mama, how do you let something like that happen? You've been living here for 30 years. Where's all your money going? Aaliyah smirked and took a slow sip of her wine, her lips barely touching the rim of the glass. She didn't say anything, but her eyes said everything. Pathetic. Jessica rolled her eyes and muttered under her breath. Here we go again. I turned to Amanda, my sister, the woman I'd helped raise after our mother died. The woman whose rent I'd paid more times than I could count. She avoided my eyes and picked at her cornbread. Anita, you know I wish I could help, but I've got my own bills piling up. Maybe you need to talk to a financial advisor or something. I looked at each of them. My children. My siblings. The people I had given everything to. I just need $3,000, I said again, softer this time. I'm not asking for much. Just enough to stay in my home. Tyrone shook his head, still grinning like this was all some kind of joke. Mama, you've got to learn to manage your life better. We can't keep bailing you out every time you mess up. Aaliyah nodded in agreement, swirling her wine like she was at a country club instead of my kitchen table. Jessica didn't even look up from her phone. You really can't expect us to just drop everything and fix your problems, Mom. And my brother Terrence? I could still hear the crowd roaring in the background of his phone call.
Sorry, sis.
Wish I could help. Maybe next month. I sat there, staring at the candles flickering between us, and I felt something crack open inside my chest. Not sadness. Not even anger. Something colder. Something final. They had no idea I was testing them. And they had no idea how catastrophically they'd just failed. I smiled softly, dabbed my mouth with my napkin, and stood up from the table. It's okay, I said. I'll figure it out. As I cleared the plates, my hands steady now, I thought about the number sitting in my bank account. $72 million. Enough to change all of our lives. Enough to prove who they really were. And they had just shown me everything I needed to know. But to understand why that dinner cuts so deep, you need to know where this all started. You need to know about the day my life split into two distinct halves, the before and the after. The day I became a millionaire, and nobody knew it but me. It was 3 weeks before that Saturday dinner. A Thursday afternoon in late September. I remember because the clinic had been understaffed all week, and I'd pulled a double shift covering for Maria, who'd called in sick for the 3rd time that month. I worked as a receptionist at Riverside Community Clinic. Nothing glamorous. 40 hours a week answering phones, filing insurance claims, smiling at patients even when my feet were screaming and my back felt like it might give out. That day, I was exhausted. Not just tired. Exhausted in that bone-deep way that comes from years of carrying more than you should. I'd been up since 5 that morning because the hot water heater was acting up again, and I'd spent an hour on the phone with a repair company who wanted $300 just to look at it. $300 I didn't have. Not until my next paycheck, anyway. By 6:30 that evening, I was sitting in my car in the parking lot behind the clinic. A 2007 Honda Civic with a crack in the windshield and a check engine light that had been glowing for 8 months. I sat there in the driver's seat, engine off, just staring at nothing. My uniform smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. My phone was vibrating in my purse, but I ignored it. I knew it was probably Jessica or Tyrone or Amanda asking for something. It was always something. I reached into my purse, past the receipts and loose change, and pulled out my phone. 17 missed calls. 9 text messages.
I didn't open them yet.
Instead, I opened the state lottery app. Now, I know what you're thinking. The lottery? Really, Anita? But here's the thing. I'd been playing the same 6 numbers for over a decade. My mother's birthday. My children's birth years. The address of the house I grew up in. $5 a week. Every Wednesday and Saturday. It was my one indulgence. My one tiny, foolish hope that maybe, just maybe, life could be different. I hadn't checked my numbers from Saturday's drawing yet. It was Thursday evening now, and honestly, I'd forgotten. I opened the app, ready to see the usual message. Better luck next time. I was about to close it when the screen went white. Then gold. Then it started flashing. Congratulations. You've won $72 million. I blinked at it. I read it again. I read it 3 more times. My hands started shaking so badly, I nearly dropped my phone. I looked around the parking lot like someone might be watching me, like this might be some kind of prank. But there was nobody. Just me and the flashing screen and the words that wouldn't stop glowing. $72 million. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I just sat there, breathing. In and out. Slow and steady. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear in my ears. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the moment everything changes. And then in the very next breath, I thought, nobody can know. I'm not sure where that instinct came from. Maybe it was self-preservation. Maybe it was wisdom. Maybe it was all those years of watching people take and take and take from me without ever giving back. But in that moment, sitting in my beat-up Honda with a screen full of zeros, I made a decision. I wasn't going to tell anyone. Not yet. Not until I knew who deserved to know. I closed the app. I took 3 deep breaths. I turned the key in the ignition, and the engine coughed to life. And then my phone buzzed again. A text message. From Jessica. Mom, can you send Tyrone $300 for gas? His card got declined, and he's stuck across town. He'll pay you back next week. I stared at that message for a long time. $300 for gas. I just won $72 million, and my daughter was asking me, no, telling me, to send my son money for gas. Money he wouldn't pay back. Money I didn't actually have in my checking account at that exact moment because I'd been juggling bills all month just to keep the lights on. I didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, I sat there and thought about every time Jessica had asked me for money. Every time Tyrone had borrowed and never returned it. Every time Amanda had shown up at my door with a sob story and an empty wallet. Every time Terrence had promised to help and then vanished when I needed him most. For 30 years, I had given everything. I had stretched every dollar. I had sacrificed my own comfort, my own dreams, my own peace of mind to make sure they were okay. And in all that time, not once, not one single time, had any of them asked me if I was okay. I typed back, I'll see what I can do. But I didn't send the money. Not that night. Not the next day, either. Because for the first time in 30 years, I didn't owe anyone anything. I had more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. I could pay off every debt, fix every broken thing, buy every dream I'd ever put on hold. I was free. Completely and utterly free. But they didn't know that. And they still thought I owed them. That's when the idea started forming. Slowly at first, like a seed taking root. What if I tested them? What if I gave them a chance to show me who they really were when they thought I had nothing? What if I asked them for help, real help, and saw what they would do? I drove home that night in silence. No radio. No nothing. Just me and the hum of the engine and the weight of $72 million sitting in an app on my phone. When I got home, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even let myself smile. I just sat on my worn-out couch in my little house on Maple Street, and I started planning. Planning the test that would change everything. Planning the moment that would reveal the truth about the people I loved most. And 3 weeks later, I invited them all to dinner. But maybe you're wondering why I felt the need to test them at all. Maybe you're thinking, Anita, they're your family. Why not just share the blessing? And I understand that. I do. But you don't know what I know. You haven't lived what I've lived. You haven't given what I've given, only to watch it get thrown back in your face like it meant nothing at all. Let me take you back. Let me show you why that test wasn't cruelty. It was necessity. It started years ago. Little things at first. $20 here. $50 there. The kind of help any mother, any sister, any family member would give without thinking twice. But little things have a way of becoming big things when nobody ever says no. And I never said no. Not to them. Jessica was 23 when she came to me with her first real ask. She'd been dating this guy, Marcus, for about 6 months. He had big dreams, she said. He was going to open a barbershop, and she wanted to help him. But she needed a cosigner for a $15,000 loan. Her credit wasn't good enough. Mine was. Barely, but it was. I remember sitting at my kitchen table with those loan papers spread out in front of me. Jessica stood behind me, her hand on my shoulder, telling me how much this meant to her. How Marcus was the one. How this was going to change their lives. How she'd pay every cent back. She promised, Mama, I promise. I signed those papers. I signed them because she was my daughter, and I believed her. I believed in her. Marcus's barbershop closed in 8 months. Jessica and Marcus broke up 2 months after that. And those loan payments, they became my responsibility. $15,000 that I didn't borrow for a dream that wasn't mine, for a man who didn't even stick around long enough to say thank you. I paid it off over 3 years. 3 years of picking up extra shifts. 3 years of skipping meals so the payment would clear. 3 years of watching my savings account drain to nothing. And when I finally finished paying it off, you know what Jessica said to me? She said, "You didn't have to do that, Mom. I would have figured it out eventually." Eventually. Like those 3 years of my life meant nothing at all. Then there was Tyrone, my baby boy, my son who I held in my arms and promised I'd give him a better life than I had. He came to me when he was 26 with this grand plan. He was going to start a car detailing business. Mobile service. He'd go to people's homes, their offices, make it convenient for them. He had it all mapped out. He just needed startup money. $8,000 for equipment, supplies, and advertising. $8,000 I didn't have. But I took out a personal loan anyway. I put my house up as collateral because the bank wouldn't approve me otherwise. I handed him that money and told him I believed in him. I told him to make me proud. His business lasted 3 months. 3 months before he got bored, before the work got too hard, before he realized that running a business meant more than just buying equipment and posting on social media. He shut it down without a word. Sold the equipment for half of what I'd paid. Kept the money for himself. And when I asked him about paying me back, he looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. "Come on, Mama," he said. "You know I'm struggling right now. I'll get you back when I'm on my feet." He never got on his feet. Or maybe he did, but he never got back to me. My sister Amanda was a different kind of burden. She didn't ask for thousands. She asked for hundreds. But she asked constantly. Every month it was something. Her rent was due. Her car payment was late. Her daughter needed school supplies. Her lights were about to get cut off. And every time, she'd promise it was just until payday. Just until her tax refund came. Just until her boyfriend helped her out. Payday never came. The refund always went somewhere else. The boyfriend always disappeared. I gave her my savings once. $4,000 I'd been putting away for years, my emergency fund, my safety net, the thing that was supposed to keep me afloat if something went wrong. Amanda needed it for rent, she said. She was 2 months behind, and they were going to evict her. She had nowhere else to go. Her kids had nowhere else to go. I gave her that money. All of it. And she promised, just like Jessica, just like Tyrone, that she'd pay me back. 6 months later, I saw photos on her Facebook. She'd gone to Miami for a long weekend. Jet skis and cocktails and hotel rooms with ocean views. She never mentioned the $4,000 again. And when I brought it up, gently because I didn't want to embarrass her, she got defensive. That was a gift, Anita. You didn't say I had to pay it back. Except I did. I absolutely did. But she'd rewritten history in her mind to make herself feel better about taking from me. And Terrence? My brother was the worst kind of taker. The kind who never asked directly. He'd just show up. Show up at my door with some story about being between jobs, about his roommate kicking him out, about needing a place to crash for a few days. Those few days would turn into weeks. Those weeks would turn into months. And the entire time, he'd eat my food, use my utilities, sleep in my guest room, and contribute nothing. Not a dime. Not even a thank you. When I finally asked him to leave, after 4 months of this, he acted like I'd betrayed him. Like I was the villain for wanting my space back, for wanting to stop hemorrhaging money on someone who didn't even pretend to appreciate it. Family's supposed to help family, he said as he packed his things. Guess you forgot that. No, Terrence. I didn't forget. I just finally realized you only remembered when you needed something. For 30 years I gave. I sacrificed. I stretched myself so thin I could barely recognize my own reflection. I worked 2 jobs. I skipped vacations. I drove cars that should have been junked a decade ago. I wore clothes until they fell apart. I lived small so they could live big. And what did I get in return?
Blame.
Resentment. The expectation that I'd keep giving forever, no matter what it cost me. They treated my generosity like it was their birthright. Like I owed them simply for existing in their lives. So when I won $72 million, I didn't rush to tell them. I didn't throw a party or start handing out checks. Instead, I sat with it. I thought about every dollar I'd given that was never returned. Every promise that was broken. Every time I'd asked for help, Real help, not money, just presence, and been met with excuses. And I realized something that broke my heart and set me free at the same time. I needed to know if they loved me, or if they just loved what I could do for them. That's why the test mattered. That's why I had to know. Because after 30 years of breaking myself for them, I deserved the truth. So that Saturday dinner wasn't just a meal. It was a reckoning. I'd set the stage carefully. The warm lighting, the good plates, the food they all loved. I wanted them comfortable. I wanted them relaxed. Because I needed to see who they really were when I asked for something they didn't want to give. The table was full. Tyrone sat at the head, acting like he owned the place even though it was my home. Aaliyah kept checking her reflection in her phone screen, reapplying lipstick between bites. Jessica had finally put her phone down, but only because she was eating. Amanda was complaining about her job, her boss, her car, everything but the blessings she still had. And Terrence had already called once from that sports bar, promising he'd stop by later, even though we all knew he wouldn't. I let them eat first. Let them fill their stomachs with my food, my effort, my love poured into every dish. I waited until they were comfortable, satisfied, leaning back in their chairs. Then I cleared my throat. I need to talk to everyone about something important, I said. The conversation didn't stop immediately. Amanda kept talking about her boss. Jessica picked up her phone again. I had to say it louder. I said I need to talk to you all. That got their attention. Forks paused midair. Aaliyah looked up from her wine glass. Tyrone leaned forward slightly, curiosity flickering across his face. I took a breath and delivered the lines I'd rehearsed 100 times in my head. I'm in trouble financially. I'm $3,000 short on what I owe for the house. If I don't come up with it by next Friday, they're going to evict me. I'll lose everything. I paused, let the words hang there. I need help. For a moment, nobody said anything. The silence felt thick, uncomfortable. I watched their faces, studied every micro-expression, every shift in posture. This was it. This was the moment.
Tyrone was the first to break.
He leaned back in his chair, shaking his head slowly, and let out this low chuckle, the kind that says I can't believe this before the words even come out. Mama, seriously? How do you even let something like that happen? His tone wasn't concerned. It was condescending. You've been living in this house for what, 30 years?
Where's all your money going?
You don't have rent. You don't have a car payment. What are you spending on? I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my face neutral. I'd expected this. I'd prepared for this. Aaliyah took a delicate sip of her wine and set the glass down with a soft clink. She didn't even look at me when she spoke. Her eyes were on her perfectly manicured nails. Anita, I'm going to be honest with you, because I care. She paused, like she was doing me some great favor. You need to learn to manage your life better. This is a pattern. You're always in some kind of crisis, and it's because you don't plan ahead. Maybe it's time to talk to a financial advisor or something. My daughter, my own daughter, rolled her eyes so dramatically, I thought they might get stuck. She didn't even try to hide her irritation. Mom, seriously, you can't keep expecting us to bail you out every time you mess up your finances. Jessica's voice was sharp, cutting. We all have our own bills, our own problems. You're an adult. You need to figure this out. I turned to Amanda, my sister, the woman whose rent I'd paid more times than I could count. The woman I'd given $4,000 to without hesitation. She was staring down at her plate, pushing greens around with her fork, avoiding eye contact. Amanda? My voice was soft, hopeful, even though I already knew. She finally looked up, and I saw it. The discomfort, the guilt she was trying to bury under excuses. Anita, you know I love you. You know I'd help if I could. She put her hand over her heart, like she was making some sacred vow. But I'm barely making it myself right now. My car needs new tires. My electricity bill was almost $200 last month. I just don't have it. Then she reached across the table and patted my hand. I'll keep you in my prayers, though. God will make a way.
Prayers.
She was offering me prayers instead of the money I'd given her to survive. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Terrence. I picked it up and read it aloud, even though I already knew what it would say. Wish I could help you out, sis. Money's tight right now. Maybe next month I'll have something for you. Maybe next month. The same thing he'd been saying for years. I looked around the table at all of them. My children. My siblings. The people I'd sacrificed everything for. And not one of them, not a single one, was willing to help me with $3,000. $3,000 when I'd given them tens of thousands over the years. Tyrone was still shaking his head, smirking like this was all some kind of joke. Aaliyah had gone back to her wine. Jessica was texting someone, her thumbs flying across the screen. Amanda was looking at me with pity now, the kind of pity that costs nothing and means even less. And Terrence wasn't even here. I stood up slowly, carefully, like my bones might break if I moved too fast. I picked up my plate and Tyrone's, stacking them quietly. It's all right, I said, my voice steady. I'll figure it out. I always do. Nobody tried to stop me. Nobody apologized. Nobody said, "Wait, Mama, let's talk about this." They just let me walk away from the table, carrying dirty dishes into the kitchen like I hadn't just asked them to save me from losing my home. I stood at the sink, running water over the plates, and I felt something settle inside me. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. They had failed the test. Every single one of them. And now I knew exactly what I needed to do next. The dinner was just the beginning. My immediate family had shown me their hearts, or the lack thereof, but I needed to be thorough. I needed to know if this coldness extended beyond my children and siblings. So over the next few days, I made calls. Careful, deliberate calls to people I'd helped over the years. People who owed me. People who'd promised they'd always be there for me. I kept a notepad beside me, writing down names and responses. Not because I'd forget, trust me, these conversations burned themselves into my memory, but because I needed to see it in writing. I needed proof that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't asking for too much. The first call was to my cousin Denise. I'd lent her $2,000 3 years ago, when her transmission gave out. She'd needed to get to work, she'd said. Couldn't afford to lose her job. I'd given her that money the same day she asked, no questions, no hesitation. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, her voice breathless, like she'd been running. Anita, hey girl, what's going on? I explained the situation, short version, just the basics. $3,000. About to lose my house. Needed help fast. There was a pause. Then a long exhale. Oh wow, that's really rough. Her tone had shifted from friendly to careful. I wish I could help you out, I really do. But Marcus just got laid off last week, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to make our own mortgage payment. Timing's just really bad right now. Marcus had been laid off. Funny, because I'd seen Denise post photos 2 days ago from a concert downtown. Good seats, too. The kind that cost at least $100 each. I understand completely, I said, keeping my voice light. Take care, Denise. You too, girl. I hope it works out for you. She hung up before I could respond. I crossed her name off the list and dialed the next number. My friend Patricia, from church. I'd helped her pay for her mother's funeral 5 years ago. $1,500 when she didn't have anywhere else to turn. She'd held my hands and cried and told me I was an angel sent by God himself. Patricia, it's Anita. Oh, honey, how are you? She sounded genuinely warm at first. I told her. Same story. Same desperate need. $3,000? She repeated it like I'd asked for $30,000. Anita, that's a lot of money. Have you tried talking to your bank about a payment plan? Or maybe there are community resources that could help. You know, there's that nonprofit downtown that helps people avoid eviction. Community resources. She was giving me advice instead of help. I've looked into those options, I lied. I just thought maybe. I'm sorry, sweetie, but we're really stretched thin right now. You know how it is. Bills just keep coming. She paused, then added, have you asked your kids? I'm sure they'd want to help their mama. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Instead, I thanked her politely, and ended the call. Next was my neighbor Vincent from 3 doors down. I'd driven him to chemotherapy appointments for 6 months when he was too sick to drive himself. 6 months of rearranging my schedule, using my gas, sitting in waiting rooms just so he wouldn't be alone. Vincent, I hate to bother you, but I'm in a really difficult situation. I laid it out again. The story was getting easier to tell, which somehow made it worse. Man, Anita, I feel for you. I really do. His voice was sympathetic but distant. But I just put a new roof on the house last month. Wiped me out completely. If this was a few months ago, maybe, but right now, I just don't have it to give. A new roof he'd mentioned cost $12,000. But $3,000 for me? That was too much. I called my old coworker Sandra. I'd covered her shifts dozens of times when her kids were sick, when she needed time off, when she just couldn't deal with work. I'd sacrificed my own rest so she could keep her job. Oh, Anita, that's terrible. She clicked her tongue sympathetically. Have you considered getting a second job? Or selling some things? Sometimes we have to make hard choices, you know? Hard choices. Like I hadn't been making those my entire life. I called Uncle Raymond, my mother's brother. I'd paid for his groceries for months when he was between jobs. Dropped them off at his apartment every week without making him feel small about it. Raymond, I need your help with something. What kind of help? His voice was already guarded. When I told him, he sighed heavily. Anita, I'm on a fixed income now. Social Security barely covers my rent as it is. I can't be lending out money I don't have. Maybe try one of those payday loan places. Payday loan places. With their predatory interest rates. That was his solution. I made 12 calls in total. 12 people I'd helped. 12 people who'd benefited from my generosity, my time, my money, my heart. And every single one of them had a reason why they couldn't help me. Every single one of them offered advice instead of action. Suggestions instead of support. Sympathy instead of solutions. Some were apologetic. Some were dismissive. Some acted like I was being unreasonable for even asking. But the result was the same across the board. No help was coming. I sat at my kitchen table that night, staring at my notepad filled with names and excuses. 12 names. 12 rejections. And that didn't even include my own family. I thought about all the times I'd said yes, without hesitation. All the times I'd stretched myself beyond what was reasonable or healthy. All the times I'd believed that love and generosity would create some kind of safety net for me when I needed it. But there was no net. There never had been. I had spent my entire life saving everyone around me, financially, emotionally, practically. I'd been the one people called when they were drowning. I'd been the life raft, the rescue boat, the steady hand pulling them to shore. And now that I was drowning, not one of them would save me. Not one single person. I closed the notepad and pushed it away. My hands were steady. My breathing was calm. I wasn't crying. I was done crying. I knew what I needed to do next. I needed to find out if there was anyone, just one person, who would prove that goodness still existed. That love wasn't just a transaction. That someone, somewhere, would reach out a hand without counting the cost. I had one more person to call. Someone I hadn't asked yet because I'd been saving her for last. Someone who had less than everyone else, but had always given more. I picked up my phone and scrolled to her name. Ms. Kendra. Ms. Kendra lived in a small apartment above Miller's Laundromat on 4th Street. The kind of place most people would walk past without noticing. Weathered brick, a narrow staircase on the side of the building, paint peeling around the doorframe. But I'd always loved going there. There was something about Kendra's space that felt like home in a way my own house sometimes didn't. I climbed those stairs on a Tuesday evening, my legs heavy with exhaustion that had nothing to do with the physical effort. I could smell cornbread baking before I even reached her door. And lavender. Kendra always kept lavender sachets around her apartment, said they brought peace and kept negativity away. I could have used both right then. I knocked softly, and within seconds I heard her shuffling toward the door. When it opened, Kendra stood there in her house dress and slippers, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her face lighting up like I'd just made her entire day. "Anita Jacobs, come in here right now." She pulled me into a hug before I could even say hello. She smelled like cocoa butter and home. Kendra was 62, 7 years older than me, and she'd been my friend for over 2 decades. We'd met at church, back when I still went regularly, and somehow we just clicked. She'd never had children of her own, said the Lord had different plans for her, but she'd mothered half the neighborhood anyway. She had less than almost anyone I knew, lived on a modest pension from her years working as a cafeteria manager at the elementary school, but she gave more than people with 10 times her income. "Sit down, baby. I just pulled cornbread out of the oven. Let me fix you a piece." "Kendra, you don't have to. Hush now. I made it for you anyway. Had a feeling you'd be stopping by." That was Kendra. Always saying she had feelings about things, and more often than not, she was right. She brought me a plate with a thick slice of cornbread, still warm, butter melting into golden pools on top. She poured 2 glasses of sweet tea and sat down across from me at her small kitchen table. The apartment was tiny, just a living room, kitchen, bathroom, and bedroom all squeezed into maybe 600 square feet, but it felt more spacious than houses 3 times its size. Pictures covered every wall. Crocheted blankets draped over her furniture. Plants sat in the windowsills, thriving under her care. "Now tell me what's weighing on your heart," she said, her eyes searching mine. "I can see it all over your face." I tried to take a bite of cornbread first, tried to delay the conversation, but the words came tumbling out before I could stop them. "I'm about to lose my house, Kendra. I'm $3,000 short, and I don't know what to do. I've asked everyone, my kids, my sister, my brother, friends, cousins, and nobody can help me. Or won't help me. I don't even know anymore." My voice cracked despite my best efforts to keep it steady. I don't know where else to turn. Kendra didn't say anything right away. She just reached across the table and took my hand, holding it between both of hers. Her skin was warm, rough from decades of work, but gentle. Then she stood up without a word and walked to her bedroom. I heard a drawer open, some rustling, and she came back holding a white envelope. The kind people keep cash in. She sat back down and placed it on the table between us. I could see her handwriting on the front. Rent, November. "Kendra, what are you?" "There's $800 in here," she said quietly. "It's my rent money for next month. But you take it, Anita. Take it right now." I stared at the envelope like it was burning the table. My throat closed up. "I can't do that. That's your rent. You'll lose your place if you don't. Then I'll talk to Mr. Miller. He's a good man. He'll work with me." She pushed the envelope closer to me. "It's only $800, baby. I know it's not the full $3,000 you need, but it's something. And you can stay here with me until you get back on your feet. I've got space. Not much, but enough for the both of us." Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and fast. I couldn't stop them. "Kendra, you can't give me your rent money. You barely have enough as it is. You can't afford." "Afford?" She squeezed my hand tighter. "Baby, I can't afford to watch someone I love lose everything when I got something to give. Money comes and goes.
But you?
You're forever to me." I was sobbing now, my shoulders shaking. This woman who had so little, who lived in a tiny apartment above a laundromat, who counted every dollar, was willing to give me her rent money, was willing to risk her own home for mine. "I've known you for 20 years, Anita. 20 years of watching you give and give and give to people who don't appreciate you.
Who don't see you."
Kendra's voice was firm now, loving but insistent. "Family ain't just who shares your blood. Family is who'll bleed for you when you're hurting. And baby, I'd bleed for you any day of the week." I couldn't take the envelope. I physically couldn't make myself pick it up, even though part of me, the desperate, exhausted part, wanted to. But sitting there in that tiny kitchen, smelling cornbread and lavender, holding hands with a woman who had every reason to protect her own limited resources and chose not to, I realized something that broke me and healed me at the same time. I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. I'd just been looking in the wrong places. I'd been expecting love from people who taught me over and over that they were incapable of giving it. And in the process, I'd almost overlooked the person who'd been showing me real love all along. I can't take this, I whispered, pushing the envelope back toward her. But thank you. Thank you for showing me what love actually looks like. Kendra smiled, tears in her own eyes now, and nodded like she understood everything I couldn't say out loud. And in that moment, I knew exactly who deserved to know about the $72 million. I knew who would be taken care of when this was all over. And it wasn't the people who shared my last name. It was the woman sitting across from me, offering me everything she had without asking for anything in return. After leaving Kendra's apartment, I drove home in silence. But this time, the silence wasn't heavy with despair. It was sharp with purpose. I knew what I had to do. The test had revealed everything I needed to know. My family had failed spectacularly, and the one person who'd passed wasn't blood at all. But I needed more than just knowledge. I needed evidence. I needed them to show their true nature so clearly, so undeniably, that there would be no room for excuses later. So, I set a trap. It was Wednesday evening, 3 days after that dinner, when I made the call. I sat in my kitchen with only the small light above the stove turned on, casting long shadows across the walls. I'd positioned my phone on the counter, voice recording app already running, hidden behind a coffee canister. Then I picked up my cell and dialed Tyrone's number. He answered on the third ring, his voice distracted. I could hear a basketball game playing in the background. Yeah, Mama? What's up? I let my voice shake. It wasn't hard. Thinking about what I was about to do made me genuinely emotional. Just not for the reasons he'd assume. Tyrone, baby, I need to talk to you about something. I paused, sniffed like I'd been crying. You were right the other night. You were right about everything. The television volume lowered. Now I had his attention. Right about what? About me not managing my life well. About me needing to figure things out on my own. My voice cracked perfectly. I can't come up with the $3,000. I've tried everything. I've called everyone. Nobody can help me, and I'm going to lose this house. Mama, I don't know what you want me to. I know you don't have the money to give me. I interrupted quickly. I'm not asking for that anymore. But I do have something else. Something valuable. I let the words hang there for a moment. Grandma's house. Silence on the other end. Complete, total silence. Even the background noise seemed to disappear. What about Grandma's house?
His voice had changed.
Sharper now. Focused in a way it hadn't been seconds before. My mother's house, their grandmother's house, had been left to me and my siblings when she passed 12 years ago. It was in a good neighborhood, fully paid off, worth at least $250,000. We'd agreed to keep it in the family, rent it out, and split the income. But I held the largest share, 40%, because I'd been the one taking care of our mother in her final years. I'll sign my share over to you, I said softly. All of it. The full 40%. If you can just give me $3,000, the house share is yours. You can sell it, rent it, do whatever you want with it. Another pause. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head, doing the math. 40% of a $250,000 house in exchange for $3,000? That was $100,000 for pocket change. You'd really do that? He was trying to sound concerned, but I could hear the hunger underneath. That seems like a lot to give up for $3,000, Mama. I don't have a choice, baby. I need to keep a roof over my head. Your grandmother would understand. She'd want me to use what she left me to survive. Yeah, of course she would. He was talking faster now. Listen, let me talk to Aaliyah about this. We might be able to come up with that $3,000. When would you need to do the paperwork? As soon as possible. Before Friday, when the eviction notice is final. Okay, let me call you back. He hung up before I could say another word. I sat there in my dim kitchen, staring at my phone, and felt something cold settle in my chest. He hadn't asked if I was okay. Hadn't asked if there were any other options. Hadn't even pretended to be conflicted about taking a $100,000 asset from his own mother for $3,000. He just heard opportunity and grabbed it with both hands. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Tyrone again. Mama, good news. Aaliyah and I talked, and we can make this work. We'll bring you the 3,000 tomorrow evening. Can we come by around 7 o'clock? We'll bring the paperwork too. Make it easy for you. Just sign everything, and we'll handle the rest. You already have paperwork? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Oh, well, just some basic transfer documents. Aaliyah's cousin works in real estate, so we can get the forms we need. Nothing complicated. We just want to help you out, Mama. Nothing complicated. They'd already contacted someone about paperwork. They'd already started planning how to take my inheritance. Okay, baby. 7 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you so much. No problem, Mama. That's what family's for, right? I hung up and immediately checked my recording app. Everything had captured perfectly. Every word, every pause, every moment of him calculating how to profit off my desperation. The next evening, I prepared my kitchen like a stage. I positioned my phone on the windowsill behind a plant, camera facing out, recording everything. I made sure the lighting was good, the audio would be clear. Then I sat at the table and waited. They arrived at 6:58, punctual for once in their lives. Tyrone carried a manila envelope. Aaliyah had her designer purse and that same smug expression she'd worn at dinner. They both looked excited, energized in a way I hadn't seen from them in years. Hey, Mama, Tyrone said, kissing my cheek quickly before sitting down. We brought everything you need. Aaliyah spread papers across my kitchen table, pointing with one manicured nail at signature lines highlighted in yellow. It's really simple, Anita. Just sign here, here, and here. These transfer your 40% share to Tyrone. Once you sign, we'll give you the 3,000, and everything will be settled. I picked up one of the papers, pretending to read it carefully. This says I'm transferring my share for $3,000. But it doesn't say anything about the actual value of the property. Well, that's just how these forms work, Aaliyah said smoothly, her voice taking on that condescending tone I'd come to hate. It's a private family transaction. The actual market value doesn't matter, because this is just between family members. Right, Mama? Tyrone leaned forward, his hand on my shoulder. We're helping you out here. Don't overthink it. Just sign so we can get you that money and you can save your house. I looked at both of them. My son, who I'd held as a baby. His wife, who I'd welcomed into our family with open arms. They were sitting in my kitchen at my table, eating my food at that dinner just days ago, and now they were here to rob me blind. They thought I was desperate enough, stupid enough, broken enough to sign away $100,000. And they weren't even trying to hide it well. I set the paper down slowly. Let me think about this for just a minute, I said softly. Mama, there's nothing to think about, Tyrone said, an edge creeping into his voice now. You said you needed help. We're here helping you. Just sign the papers. Aaliyah pushed the pen closer to me. Anita, you're running out of time. Friday is 2 days away. If you want to save your house, you need to do this now. The pressure, the manipulation, the barely concealed greed. All of it was being captured on camera, every word, every expression, every moment of them trying to steal from their own mother. I picked up the pen, and I smiled. Actually, I think I need to talk to a lawyer first, just to make sure everything's proper. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Tyrone's face hardened. Aaliyah's smile disappeared completely. A lawyer? Mama, we don't need a lawyer for this. It's just family business. Still, I think I should. They left 20 minutes later, frustrated and empty-handed, taking their predatory paperwork with them. But I had something far more valuable. I had evidence. Video evidence. Audio evidence. Proof of exactly who they were and what they were willing to do. They weren't trying to buy my share of Grandma's house. They were trying to steal it. And they hadn't even tried to hide it well. 2 weeks later, I sat in a leather chair on the 40th floor of the Morrison building downtown, wearing a navy blue suit I'd bought specifically for this occasion. My hair was done. My nails were manicured. I looked like money because, well, I had it. $72 million worth of it. But they didn't know that yet. Mr. Carter Hill sat beside me, his expensive briefcase open on the polished mahogany table. He was exactly the kind of attorney you'd want in your corner, sharp, methodical, and completely unimpressed by theatrics. I'd hired him 3 days after Tyrone and Aaliyah had tried to rob me in my own kitchen. Told him everything. Showed him everything. And he'd smiled in a way that told me he'd handled cases like this before and enjoyed winning them. "They'll be here any moment," he said, glancing at his watch. "Are you ready for this?" I nodded once. More than ready. The conference room was all glass and steel and intimidation. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. The table could seat 20 people. Everything about this space said power, money, and consequences. I'd chosen it deliberately. I wanted them uncomfortable. I wanted them small. At exactly 2 o'clock, the receptionist opened the door and my family walked in. Tyrone came first, wearing jeans and a polo shirt, looking around like he'd just walked into a museum he didn't understand. Aaliyah followed in her athleisure wear and designer sunglasses perched on top of her head, her usual armor of superficial elegance. Jessica wore ripped jeans and an oversized sweater, her face buried in her phone. Amanda had on a church dress, already looking nervous. And Terrence, surprisingly, had actually shown up, wearing a wrinkled button-down that looked like he'd pulled it from the bottom of a laundry basket.
They all stopped when they saw me. Really saw me.
Sitting there in my suit, next to a lawyer, in an office that probably cost more per hour than they made in a week. "Mama, what is this?" Tyrone's voice had an edge of concern now. "Not for me. For himself." "Please sit down," Mr. Hill said, gesturing to the chairs across from us. His tone was polite but final. "We have matters to discuss." They sat slowly, exchanging glances, trying to piece together what was happening. Aaliyah kept looking at Mr. Hill, then at me, her expression calculating. Jessica finally put her phone down. Amanda's hands were already fidgeting in her lap. Terrence just looked confused. "I don't understand why we're in a lawyer's office," Jessica said. "What's going on?" Mr. Hill opened his briefcase and pulled out a tablet. "We're here to address an attempted fraud against Mrs. Jacobs. Specifically, an attempt by Tyrone and Aaliyah Jacobs to coerce Mrs. Jacobs into signing over her 40% share of an inherited property valued at approximately $250,000 in exchange for $3,000, a transaction designed to exploit her perceived financial desperation." The room went very quiet, very still. Tyrone's face flushed red. "That's not what happened. Mama asked us for help, and we were trying to help her. Were you?" Mr. Hill tapped the tablet screen. "Let's review the evidence." He pressed play, and suddenly my voice filled the room. The phone call. Every word of it. Me asking for help. Tyrone immediately jumping at the chance to take my inheritance. His barely concealed excitement. His rush to get paperwork. And then the kitchen conversation. The pressure. The manipulation. Aaliyah insisting I didn't need a lawyer. Both of them pushing me to sign away $100,000 for $3,000. The audio was crystal clear.
Damning.
Undeniable. When it finished, nobody spoke. Tyrone was staring at the table. Aaliyah's smug expression had evaporated completely. Jessica looked between them, her mouth slightly open. Amanda was crying quietly. Terrence looked like he wanted to disappear. "That was a setup," Aaliyah finally said, her voice sharp. "She set us up. I tested you," I said quietly. "There's a difference." Then I reached into my own folder and pulled out a single piece of paper. A bank statement. I slid it across the table slowly, deliberately, until it sat in the center, where everyone could see it. The number was right there at the top.
Clear as day.
Account balance, $72 million. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Jessica leaned forward, squinting at the paper like she'd misread it. "Mama, you had all that money?" Her voice was barely a whisper.
Broken. Confused.
Like her entire understanding of reality had just shattered. "Yes, Jessica. I did." I folded my hands on the table, my voice calm, steady. "I won the lottery 7 weeks ago. $72 million. And I decided not to tell anyone. I wanted to see
who would still love me when they thought I had nothing.
I wanted to know who would help me when I was desperate. I paused, let the words sink in. And now I know. Tyrone's face had gone from red to pale. You were testing us? I was testing all of you. And you all failed. I looked at each of them in turn. Except you weren't just indifferent. Tyrone, Aaliyah, you tried to rob me. You tried to steal $100,000 from your own mother. We didn't know you had money, Tyrone said weakly. We thought. You thought I was desperate enough to be exploited. I finished for him. And you were right about the desperate part. I was desperate to know the truth. And now I do. Mr. Hill cleared his throat. Mrs. Jacobs has asked me to present you with 2 options. He pulled out another set of documents. Option 1. We pursue criminal charges for attempted fraud and elder financial abuse. Given the recorded evidence, conviction is virtually certain. Amanda let out a small sob. Jessica looked like she might be sick. Tyrone and Aaliyah were frozen. Option 2, Mr. Hill continued. You sign over your collective shares of the inherited property to Mrs. Jacobs for $3,000 total, the exact amount she asked you for when she needed help. The same amount you refused to give her. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. I could see it register on their faces. $3,000. The price of their greed. The proof of their betrayal. Now the cost of their redemption. If you choose option 2, Mrs. Jacobs will not pursue legal action. You'll sign, you'll leave, and you'll have to live with what you've done. But you won't go to jail. Tyrone looked at me, his eyes pleading now. Mama, please. We made a mistake. We're sorry. Are you sorry you did it? I asked quietly. Or sorry you got caught? He didn't answer. He couldn't. Mr. Hill placed the documents in front of them. You have 5 minutes to decide. It took them 3. One by one, they signed. Tyrone, Aaliyah, Jessica, Amanda, even Terrence, who'd barely said a word the entire time. They signed away their shares of Grandma's house for $3,000 split among them, $600 each. When the last signature was done, Mr. Hill collected the papers and nodded once. You're free to go. They stood slowly, defeated, ashamed. Jessica looked at me one more time, tears streaming down her face. Mama, I'm so sorry. So am I said.
And I meant it. I was sorry it had come to this.
Sorry they'd shown me who they really were. Sorry that $72 million couldn't buy me a family that actually loved me. They filed out one by one, and the door closed behind them with a soft click. Mr. Hill turned to me. How do you feel? I looked out the window at the city below, at all the tiny people going about their lives, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years.
Peace.
Cold, hard, liberating peace. They thought I needed $3,000, I said softly. Turns out, I just needed the truth. And now I had it. 1 month later, I stood in the doorway of a beautiful 2-bedroom condo in the Riverside Commons development, watching Miss Kendra walk through her new home for the first time. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows. The kitchen had brand new stainless steel appliances. The bathroom had a walk-in shower with grab bars and a bench, safe, accessible, perfect for her. The living room was spacious enough for all her plants, all her pictures, all her crocheted blankets that made a place feel like home. She moved slowly from room to room, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She kept touching things, the granite countertops, the soft carpet, the window that overlooked a little garden courtyard below. Anita, baby, this is too much, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. This is way too much. It's not enough, I said firmly. It'll never be enough for what you gave me. But it's a start. I'd paid cash for the condo. $320,000. Pocket change now, but a fortune to someone like Kendra who'd spent her entire life scraping by. The deed was in her name. Taxes and HOA fees paid in perpetuity through a trust I'd set up. She'd never pay rent again. Never worry about Mr. Miller raising prices or selling the building. Never stress about having a roof over her head. You were willing to give me your rent money, I reminded her. The money you needed to survive. You offered me your home when I had nowhere to go. This. I gestured around the condo. This is just me returning the favor. Except I can actually afford it. Kendra pulled me into a hug so tight, I could barely breathe. She smelled like cocoa butter and lavender, just like always. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did. I pulled back and looked her in the eyes. You showed me what real love looks like. You reminded me that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up when you need them most. And you showed up, Kendra, when nobody else would. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand and laughed softly. Well, I guess the Lord had plans for both of us, didn't he? I guess so. We spent the afternoon measuring windows for curtains and talking about furniture. Kendra kept crying happy tears. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something warm spread through my chest. Not vindication. Not victory. Just pure, simple joy in making someone I loved feel safe and valued. This was what money was supposed to do. This was what wealth was for. 2 weeks after that, I stood in a small office space downtown with a bronze plaque being mounted on the wall, the Jacobs Giving Foundation. My attorney, Mr. Hill, had helped me set it up. A nonprofit dedicated to providing small business grants to women over 40 who were trying to start or grow businesses. Women who'd been told they were too old, too late, too risky. Women like me, who'd spent their lives giving to everyone else and had nothing left for their own dreams. The first round of grants went out that month. $25,000 each to 12 women. A bakery owner expanding to a second location. A seamstress opening her own shop. A woman starting a home care agency. A graphic designer finally going freelance after years of corporate work. Each one had a story. Each one had been overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed. I read every application myself. Cried over half of them. Funded as many as I could. This was my purpose now. Not hoarding wealth. Not proving anything to people who didn't deserve my energy. But lifting up the women who reminded me of myself, the ones who'd given everything and deserved a chance to receive something in return. On a quiet Saturday afternoon, I found myself driving through my old neighborhood, past the clinic where I used to work, past the house on Maple Street where I'd raised my children, where I'd hosted that terrible dinner, where I'd sat in my kitchen and realized my family didn't actually love me the way I'd loved them. I didn't feel angry anymore. Anger required energy I wasn't willing to spend. I didn't feel sad either. Sadness required grief for something lost, and I'd realized I'd never really had what I thought I'd lost in the first place. I just felt free. Free from obligation. Free from guilt. Free from the weight of people who took and never gave back. Free to build a life that actually reflected my values instead of their demands. I drove past Ms. Kendra's old apartment above the laundromat. Someone else lived there now. But Kendra was safe, comfortable, cared for. That mattered more than anything. My phone rang. It was Jessica. She'd been calling once a week since the meeting with Mr. Hill. I let it go to voicemail like I always did. I wasn't ready to talk to her yet. Maybe someday. Maybe never. I hadn't decided. But I didn't know her a decision on her timeline. I pulled over near a park and sat there for a moment, windows down, breathing in the autumn air. A group of kids played on the swings. A couple walked their dog. Life moved on, indifferent to my revelations, and somehow that was comforting. My family had tested my patience for years. They'd pushed me, used me, taken from me until I had nothing left to give. And when I finally tested their hearts, when I asked them for the smallest fraction of what I'd given them, they'd failed spectacularly. But I hadn't failed. I'd passed my own test. I discovered my worth wasn't tied to how much I could give away. I'd learned that love wasn't supposed to hurt this much, cost this much, demand this much. I'd found out who deserved my generosity and who'd just been exploiting it. They taught me what family wasn't. Kendra had reminded me what love actually is. And, in the end, I was the one who passed. I started the car and drove toward my new life. The one I was building on my own terms, with my own rules, surrounded by people who actually valued me. The one where I got to decide who deserved my time, my energy, my heart. $72 million hadn't bought me a family, but it had bought me something more valuable: the truth, and the freedom to walk away from people who never deserved me in the first place. I smiled as I drove, the sun setting behind me, casting everything in golden light. They'd tested my patience for 30 years. I'd tested their hearts for 30 days. And I was the only one who passed. Did you like my story? And what city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. Give us a like if you enjoyed the story. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. By the way, don't forget to subscribe. It encourages me to keep bringing more stories like this. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.